Good morning, YouTube. Welcome back to the channel. This is IMAX Sports with another football video, and today I'm going over my Week 1 NFL Power Rankings. I have made a couple of preseason power ranking videos already, but this is my final draft. These are the teams that this is where I really think the teams are. I made actually a lot of significant changes since my last one of these videos, and I'm really excited about this season because I think that there's a lot of new teams that are going to be jostling things up a bit. That being said, an announcement that I made earlier today is that myself and a couple other small football channels, Football Whale and Super Duper Football Show, are hosting a fantasy football league and a Pigskin Pick'Em Group. Fantasy football, as you all probably know, is when a bunch of different people draft teams of players, and every week they edit their teams and see how many points they can get based off of how well their players perform, and they try to win the Super Bowl. Pigskin Pick'Em is every week you get points for, you pick all 16 all 16 games or 14 or however many games there are that week, and you get a point for every game that you pick correctly. And so I'm hosting each of those with a couple of other football channels. So if you guys are interested in joining, the links will be in the description. There's a 14-person limit on the fantasy football, and there are already 6 spots taken up. Pigskin Pick'Em has no limit, so feel free to join that. Even after there's no limit, so you can join that whenever. Both of those close at the start of the season, so make sure you do it before then. And there will be some time where we'll need to have a fantasy football draft. Not sure when that will be, but we'll figure it out. So yeah, those are just my quick announcements, and without further ado, let's get right into the video. So, the first category we have is they just suck. There's not really a way to put this lightly. These teams are just terrible. So number 32, we have the Houston Texans. Number 31, we have the Detroit Lions. Number 30, we have the Philadelphia Eagles. And at number 29, we have the New York Jets. I think everyone saw almost, if not all of these teams coming. The Texans were bad last year, and they got rid of even more players this year, including J.J. Watt. They're already bad, and they keep shoveling off more and more of their good players. Deshaun Watson's a very talented quarterback. He'll probably win 1 or 2 games off of his own personal skill, but I can't see the Texans being any better than one of the bottom teams in the league this season, based off of the roster that they have. Because a good quarterback alone can't win. You saw that last year when Deshaun Watson went 4-12. And now they're worse this year. At 31, we have the Detroit Lions. The Lions, I believe, went 5-11 last year, and they just traded away Matthew Stafford for Jared Goff. Matthew Stafford has been the one defining characteristic of the Lions of the last few years, ever since Calvin Johnson left. And basically the Lions haven't been able to get their spunk back, and they never really had any spunk to begin with, but with Matthew Stafford leaving, they're just not going to be good. Matt Patricia didn't do a very good job coaching, and their team just isn't going to be very good for the next few years. At number 30, we have the Philadelphia Eagles. They lost Carson Wentz last year after a devastatingly bad season for him. The Eagles went 4-11-1. Now their starting quarterback is Jalen Hurts, and he didn't look too impressive last year. The Eagles team just isn't good for any quarterback right now. I'm not expecting anything out of them this year. And then the New York Jets, I have at number 29. They just got a new quarterback this year by the name of Zach Wilson. I don't think that he's going to be anything impressive. I think that, again, these teams are beyond quarterback help. Changing the quarterback cannot help these teams at all whatsoever. They would need Tom Brady to have a chance at making the playoffs. Next, we have Breakout Quarterback. This category is teams that are slightly better than the last one, where if they have a good quarterback or a quarterback that can step it up a bit, they could actually be really good. Starting with the Panthers. Sam Darnold's been stuck on the Jets for the first few years of his career, and now he's on the Panthers with a decent wide receiver core and Christian McCaffrey on the offense. Their defense isn't great. It's actually kind of bad, but they could have some offensive success with Sam Darnold as the quarterback, and the running game that they have giving him some more room to breathe. At number 27, we have the New York Giants. The Giants overall have a very good roster. They have some good weapons at wide receiver. They have a healthy Saquon Barkley. They have Evan Ingram at tight end, and they had one of the better defenses in the league last year. I believe they had somewhat of a top 10 defense. So I think that this year they could have a decent season if Daniel Jones can break out of his slump. He hasn't really had any career so far. He started off bad and he hasn't really improved a whole lot. But if he can have a bounce back season this year, the Giants could be good. At number 26, we have the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Jaguars were the worst team in the league last year after the Jets decided to graciously give them the number 1 spot in the draft. They drafted Trevor Lawrence because of that, and Trevor Lawrence is supposed to be very good, but rookie quarterbacks on bad teams don't always do well their first year. Usually takes them a little bit of time to adjust, and then the next year is when they really start to break out. Trevor Lawrence could be one of those guys that starts off really well his first season, but we really don't know. I have them at 26. I expect them to have 5 or 6 wins, maybe 7, maybe 8, but I don't think that they're going to be a playoff team. But that's why they're in this category, because they have potential. They have potential at their quarterback as well. Number 25, we have the Atlanta Falcons. The Falcons were bad last year, and then they got rid of Julio Jones. Enough said. At number 24, we have the Oakland Raiders, or the Las Vegas Raiders. Sorry, I've been saying Oakland Raiders my whole life. The Las Vegas Raiders at number 24. The Las Vegas Raiders last year were 7-9, and I think that was a little bit of luck. I think that Derek Carr had a very strong, an uncharacteristically strong season to start off last year. And then the second half of the season, when they went 2-7, versus the first half when they went 5-2, was a little bit more characteristic of Derek Carr. 2-7 is generally about where the Raiders have been for the last few years, except for that one season where they had 12 wins. I don't think Derek Carr is a terrible quarterback, but I don't think that the team around him is good enough to propel him any further than he already is. I'd say the Raiders are likely going to have 5 or 6 wins this year, especially being in the tough division that they are. And at 23, that brings us to the Indianapolis Colts. I think the Colts are a very confusing team this year. They have a strong team, but they don't have a quarterback. I mean, Carson Wentz is their starting quarterback, who did terribly on the Eagles last year, and he got injured. So now their quarterback is rookie Jacob Eason, unless Carson Wentz and an injured, poor-performing Carson Wentz returns to the football field. I don't see but then again, without a quarterback in 2019, this team still went 7-9. And then with a quarterback last year, they went 12-4. So this is a strong Colts team, but I can't see them winning more than 50% of their games without a starting quarterback. And they don't have a starting quarterback on their team right now. Our next tier is the Solid.500 teams. These teams, I think, will be somewhere between 8-9 and 10-7. Or 7 and 10-7. We have the Bengals, the Vikings, the Washington football team, the Broncos, and the Bears. Number 22, we have the Cincinnati Bengals. The Bengals have been recovering the last 2 years. Andy Dalton had a very up and down career with some amazing seasons and some terrible seasons. And his last season with the Bengals was one of the terrible ones, allowing them to draft Joe Burrow in the draft. Joe Burrow played last year as being the number 1 pick in the draft, and he had a decent season despite his injury. This year he doesn't have an injury, but the Bengals have one of the hardest schedules in the entire league. So although I think that they could potentially be a borderline playoff team, I think that their schedule is too tough for them to be able to overcome and make the playoffs. I think they'll be a solid 7-10, 8-9 team. Next, we have the Minnesota Vikings at number 21. The Vikings last year went 7-9. They have a astonishingly strong offense and a mediocre to bad defense. This is a big change from a couple of years ago when they had one of the best defenses in the league and a mediocre to bad offense. Kirk Cousins and the weapons that they've given him have transformed this offense. They have Dalvin Cook, they have Justin Jefferson, and they have Adam Thielen. Those three together is a dynamite offense, especially with Kirk Cousins, a veteran, strong, smart quarterback. He knows how to play with these players. They were one of the most productive offenses in the league last year, and if their defense can pull it together, I think the Vikings can make the playoffs, but the NFC is just really tight right now. So I think it'll be tough, but I think that they might be able to pull out a playoff berth if they can pull their defense together. Washington last year was also 7-9. So were the Vikings, and the Bears were 8-8. So a lot of these teams were around 500 last year. I think that they're going to stay pretty static. Washington, I think, is going to win the NFC East. Their starting quarterback right now is Ryan Fitzpatrick, but I think Taylor Heineke is going to take over before the season is done. Ryan Fitzpatrick has had a very up and down career, as everyone already knows, and I'm very curious to see what he'll do this year as the starting / kind of backup quarterback. Taylor Heineke played in the playoff game last year, and he stuck with Tom Brady for a while before they ended up losing. So the Broncos last year were 7-9. Their issue was Daniel Jones. Their issue was not Daniel Jones. Drew Lock. Drew Lock is now gone. They now have Teddy Bridgewater. I think that Teddy Bridgewater could potentially bring them to the playoffs, but they're in a very tough division. As I've said previously, with the Chiefs and the Chargers, I think that they're likely to be a 9-8 team, but I think that in the next few years they could be really good. And with the Bears, they got a new quarterback this year. I think Mitch Trubisky worked really well with that team, so I think that this year they're either going to be really good or really bad, and I'm not sure which one. Next, we have playoff contenders. There's not really much to be said here. All of these teams were between 7-9 and 11-5 last year, except for the Saints, who were 12-4, but the Saints lost Drew Brees. And the Steelers, but they lost the last 5 out of 6 games. So basically, I think the Browns are the best team here because they were the best team last year that kept all their players. The Saints lost Drew Brees. That's going to be a blow, but I think that they're still going to be able to recover and have a decent season. The Patriots at number 15 have the best defense here by far. The Dolphins and the Steelers both have strong defenses. The Steelers actually had the best defense in the league last year. But New England last year were missing all of their starting linebackers for this season. Hightower, Van Noy, and Matthew Judon, none of them were playing last year, and they were still a number 7 scoring defense. I think the Patriots will be top 5 in turnovers, scoring, and yardage defense this season, and will be the number 1 defense in overall defense in the league. That being said, the offense is still a concern. I don't know if Cam Newton or Mac Jones are going to be starting for the majority of the season. But either way, our offense is going to need to click for us to make the playoffs, and that's why we are a playoff contender, but it's definitely nowhere near a guarantee because our offense last year was horrendously bad. At 16, we have the Steelers. The Steelers started off 12-0 last year and ended the season 5-1 or 1-5. That's not a good sign for this season. I think a lot of people think that they're going to be worse than they actually are. I myself think that they're going to be worse than they actually might be. I think that 9-8 or 10-7 is a accurate guess for their record this year, but I really have no idea what to expect from them after such a bad end to last year. At number 17, we have the Miami Dolphins. They had 10 wins last year. They barely missed the playoffs. I think that this year they're going to go down a little bit. I think that their defense is going to tank a little bit. Tua is going to have a tough season getting started, and they're going to start off poorly, try and make their way back up, but it'll be too little too late to make the playoffs. Potentially strong teams, we have the 49ers, the Cowboys, the Titans, and the Seahawks. I think that this is a very characteristic category because all of these teams are questionable. The 49ers last year went 5-11, but their entire team was injured the whole season, including their starting quarterback, Jimmy Garoppolo. They drafted a new quarterback, a backup quarterback, but I think Jimmy's going to be their starter. He was 3-3 last year, 3-2 more like because the last game he played when he got injured, they lost. So he was more like 3-2 in games that he completed. Dak Prescott was 2-2 in games that he completed. Both of those quarterbacks got injured last year, and the Cowboys completely crumbled after Dak Prescott left. They ended 5-11. They started 2-2, and they finished the season 5-11, finishing off 3-9. I think that the Cowboys have a very strong team. Dak Prescott's 42-27 in his career. Jimmy Garoppolo is somewhere in the 70 to 60% win percentage in his career. I think that both of these teams are going to bounce back, especially with the 49ers defense. And they're both going to be playoff teams. Or they're both going to have shots at the playoffs. At number 10 and 9, we have the Titans and the Seahawks. The Titans have the best offense in the NFL right now, in my opinion. They just got Julio Jones. They still have A.J. Brown. They still have Derrick Henry. They still have Ryan Tannehill. This team is insane. They lost Jonnu Smith, but Julio Jones. Enough said. The Titans last year were a very questionable team, as were the Seahawks. They would win really good games, and then they would lose really important games. And that's why I have them here. They would win stupid games against good teams that weren't important at all, but then they would lose super important games against teams that they should be beating. And that's not really a good way to start off, to finish off a season, to start off the next year. I think both of those teams have potential to be one of the best teams in the league, but right now, neither of them are confidently one of the better teams in the league. At number 8, we have the Los Angeles Rams. The Rams just traded Jared Goff for Matthew Stafford, and I think that they're going to be even better this year because of it. Jared Goff has a much better record than Matthew Stafford in his career, but I think that that's mostly due to being on the Rams. He was carried to a Super Bowl in his first couple of seasons with Sean McVay's coaching, the defense that they had and the offensive weapons, and then he didn't do anything in the game against the Patriots. They lost 13-3. I think that with Matthew Stafford, who's been dragged down by his team, being on a team that will be able to adhere to his strengths, and a coach that has experience with winning, they're going to continue to do well, potentially win their division. And the toughest division in football, mind you. At number 7, we have the Ravens. The Ravens last year went 11-5, lower than they were a couple years ago with Lamar Jackson as the starter. But I think that they're still going to have an amazing season this year. I think that they're going to be one of the better teams in the league, and I think that they will win their division. Again, another one of the tougher divisions. At number 6, we have the Chargers, the Los Angeles Chargers. I said Chargers at first because I couldn't think of what city they were from. I almost said San Diego again. The Chargers, I think, are going to have a fantastic season this year. They went 7-9 last year, but I think that Justin Herbert finished off the season 5-1. I think that he was 1-8 going into the finale of the season. He finished off 5-1. Again, rookie quarterbacks, it's tough being a rookie quarterback. Rookie seasons are always the worst season if you play as a starter your rookie year. And finishing 5-1 last year, I think, is more what we're going to see this year. He played a lot of really close games against Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes. He went to overtime with Patrick Mahomes. He lost to Brady by 3. He lost to the Saints by 3. He had some really close games. He didn't lose any games by more than one score. It was an insane season last year. And I think that this year, with the slightly easier schedule, the Chargers are going to do really well, potentially beat the Chiefs out for the division title. The Bills are just consistently good. They were 13-3 last year. I don't expect them to be any worse this year. They had one of the better teams in the AFC. They kept all of their players. Enough said. And last but certainly not least, we have the NFL's elite. And some of you might be very curious as to why one of these teams is here. At number 1, I have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I know a lot of people are going to be very upset about this. A lot of people think the Chiefs are the best team in the league. But for me, I cannot put the Super Bowl team as anywhere other than 1. If a team wins the Super Bowl and re-signs every single player from their starting roster the next season, they need to be number 1. I mean, if it's just disrespectful not to put them at number 1 after having the entire roster re-sign with the team. That being said, we move on to number 2, which is the Kansas City Chiefs. I don't think I'll have any disagreements on here with the Chiefs being at number 2, except for people saying that they should be at number 1. Everyone knows that the Chiefs are the most talented team in the league. Not necessarily the best team, but most talented team in the league. They won the Super Bowl 2 years ago. Patrick Mahomes has been in the MVP conversation for 3 seasons running, and they're just clearly an elite team. At number 3, we have the Green Bay Packers. The Packers, obviously, with Aaron Rodgers, had a fantastic season last year. They have a fantastic defense, something Rodgers hasn't always had in his career. And they lost an NFC Championship game last year to the Buccaneers, arguably because they decided not to go for it on 4th down and kick the field goal, willingly giving Brady the ball with the lead and 2 minutes on the clock. That being said, the Packers could have very well won the Super Bowl last year with different decision-making, and I think this year they still have just as strong of a team. And at number 4, we have the Arizona Cardinals. Every year I like to pick one outside team as my team to win the Super Bowl. I don't always think that they're actually going to win the Super Bowl, but it was always fun to pick an outside team and see how they do. Last year I picked the Seahawks. I started off 5-1. Russell Wilson had 24 touchdowns in the first 5 games of the season, and then they died. So hopefully, sorry for you Cardinals fans that I'm picking the Cardinals this year as my team to make it all the way, because they're probably going to do well for the first 5 weeks of the season and then die. But we'll see. They're my outside chance of victory right now because I really like their team. They have one of the strongest. They had one of the strongest offenses in the league last year, and then this year they added AJ Green. On defense, they had a really decent defense last year, and then they just added JJ Watt and Malcolm Butler. I mean, obviously JJ Watt's a much bigger improvement than Malcolm Butler is, but both of those players are going to add a lot to their team. They have a very strong offense. I think they're going to have a potentially top 10 defense. I think the Cardinals are going to be a threat to be reckoned with next year. Easily 12-5 team floor, maybe 13-4, potentially 14-3, but that'll be tough with their division. I can see the Cardinals making it all the way, even winning the NFC West, which is the toughest division in football. So I hope you guys enjoyed my video. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe, comment down below what you guys think of my predictions, and make sure to join the Fantasy Football and Pigskin Pick'Em. The Fantasy Football has a limit of 14, so make sure you get your spot early, and Pigskin Pick'Em is open to anyone, just make sure you join before the season starts. So thank you guys again for watching. The links to those will both be in the description below, and I'll see you guys all in the next video. Peace.